What's up, guys? Welcome to another Trade Destinations video. Guys, the unthinkable may happen. Former Conn Smythe winner Ryan O'Reilly could be dealt by the 2023 trade deadline alongside Vladimir Tarasenko. But today we're going to be focusing just on Ryan O'Reilly. And even though the St. Louis Blues are competing for a playoff spot, they have been very underwhelming. One of the most disappointing teams in the 2022-2023 season. And according to Darren Drager, it is very likely that they will be taking serious calls for Ryan O'Reilly, who will be a UFA at the end of this season. Not only that, but he is one of the few captains that are available this deadline alongside Jonathan Taves and Bo Horvat, who also so happen to be centermen. So, Ryan O'Reilly, where does he go?
Well, there's a few interesting options with Ryan O'Reilly for sure, and obviously, it's a little bit of a tough situation for them and for the Blues, just because he's not the main priority. I think on a lot of teams that are trying to look for high quality players. Obviously with the big names being rumored like Jonathan Tays and obviously Timo Meyer and Bo Horvat, and even guys like Sean Monahan to some extent as well. Ryan O'Reilly is not necessarily a priority for a lot of these teams, but one of the teams that was listed as a potential suitor was the Boston Bruins. Now we all know how big the Boston Bruins are on Bo Horvat. I think the Bruins likely end up with Bo Horvat, but if they don't end up with Bo Horvat, I could see a situation where Ryan O'Reilly fits the Bruins. The reason being is, as much as the Bruins have a really good deep team, they could add another player like Ryan O'Reilly to take the load off of a guy like David Krejci. And I know that O'Reilly is a center primarily, but even if they have to throw a guy like Charlie Coyle on the wing and play a situation where Ryan O'Reilly could play at center, that could work for the Bruins. I'm not going to jump too much into the Bruins because
Can
it's
I
not
just add
really.
one little thing before we move on for
Yeah,
the
go.
Boston Bruins? Charlie Coyle could be moved to the wing, like you were saying, but also their depth on center would be so deep that maybe Charlie Coyle could be centering the fourth line. It's not ideal for him. I
Yeah.
do see him more as a third line player, but it's very, very possible that we could see that happen. Not
And
only that, guys, you have to take this into consideration. The main guys in terms of centermen that are being targeted are Bo Horvat and Sean Monahan. Bo Horvat and Sean Monahan because they're younger. Sean Monahan will obviously cost less. In terms of Taves, he's up there in age. The asking price, like we covered in our trade destination video for Taves, won't be that high, second or third round pick, but he's up there in age. He doesn't really have that much to give except championship pedigree and good leadership. Ryan O'Reilly only being 31 years old, yes, it will be fantastic to add a former Conn Smythe winner and Stanley Cup champion and captain of the St. Louis Blues, but it's going to cost a lot. There's been talk
yes.
about a first round pick and a top prospect. And moving on to the um, Toronto Maple Leafs, which is another suitor. Apparently, they've been interested in Ryan O'Reilly for months, and they're asking for Matthew Nyes. But unfortunately, it seems like Toronto is unwilling at the moment to move a guy like Nyes. I know last trade deadline, Nyes was in demand, and they did not include him in any deal that they made.
Well, yeah, but I think the other thing is too with the Toronto Maple Leafs is that this is a team that for so many years has never really had, championship pedigree players. They've added guys to their lineups that, have won in the playoffs, but have never actually won, the Stanley Cup or ended up going pretty far, right? And so what's ended up happening is with the Leafs, if you look at kind of where they're at, right? They adding a guy like Ryan O'Reilly makes a ton of sense for them. And the reason it does is, and I know Chris would disagree with me on this, but the reason I think it makes a lot of sense for them is because he's a guy who's won a Stanley Cup. He's very good defensively in his own end. He can put the puck in the net. He can also get points every now and then. But what would happen with Ryan O'Reilly is essentially kind of what the situation would be, let's say in Toronto, where their center core would be absolutely filthy, right? You could have a situation where you could play Austin Matthews, John Tavares, and Ryan O'Reilly as your top three centers. I'm not saying that that's what they're going to do, but they have an opportunity here to add another top six forward to their lineup that makes them better. And I think Ryan O'Reilly, I know that numbers this season haven't been the best. He's also been injured at times too. But this is a guy that if you want to get to the next round and you want to be able to compete with teams of Tampa and Boston, I think this is an opportunity to go get a guy who's won a Stanley Cup before, has done this, knows what it takes to win, and also at the same time, he improves the Toronto Maple Leafs forward core anyways. So I know that the whole thing about Matthew Nyes, listen, I don't think Ryan O'Reilly's worth a first round pick and a top prospect, in my opinion. I know people might disagree with me on that. I just
I
think
disagree with that.
I'm going to tell you why I disagree. I'm going to tell you why I think that. It's just because when you look at the guy that he's at, right, he's only really ever had one season above, 70 points. Every other season, he's been at 61, 54, 58. He's a 50 to 60 point guy, right? And for me to go pay a first round pick and a top prospect is a little bit hefty for that. Although I understand the terms of where he's at, in the sense where he's 31 years old, he's won a Stanley Cup, he's won a Selke Trophy as well. I understand all of that. I think that's a little bit too high of an asking price. I don't know if Matthew Nyes gets thrown into the deal, but there is one guy that I think could benefit from a change of scenery. I know he's injured right now, but
Yeah.
there's something that could potentially benefit from a change of scenery. I just don't think that it's worked out in Toronto as of right now, and that's Nick Robertson. And I think Nick Robertson, and potentially a first round pick, because the Leafs' first round pick is going to be late anyways, could be a more enticing option than trading away a first round pick and Matthew Nyes. I think Nyes and even Topi Niemela to some extent, I think are kind of untouchables for the Leafs, just because Nyes has been really good, and the Leafs expect him to be one of the best players to come out of his draft. And also Niemela, they're very high on as well. I think that if they want to move a prospect, the guy they probably end up moving at some point is going to be Nick Robertson. I think it makes sense for the Blues as well. So that's my opinion on it. I know that I'm not degrading Ryan O'Reilly's value per se. I'm just saying that a first round pick and a top prospect, I think, is too high
Look,
for him. But a mid tier prospect, or a guy that's a B level prospect, kind of like Nick Robertson, or an A minus prospect in Nick Robertson, I think could make more sense. So it's not a huge, I didn't. It's not like I went, oh my god, just a first round pick. I lowered the value a little bit, but not by a whole lot.
because
So
you got to take this into consideration, okay? He's one of the best two-way centermen in the league. You put him on a team with Boston, okay? You already have Patrice Bergeron, who's the ideal two-way centerman, okay? A guy that, once he's retired, they should literally rename the Selke Trophy after him, okay? Then, if you go to Toronto, again, John Tavares is one of the best two-way centermen as well. So imagine adding O'Reilly on a team like Toronto or Boston. It makes them so much better. And a guy
yeah,
like Doug Armstrong, the general manager of the St. Louis Blues, knows his best trading pieces right now are Tarasenko, Mikola, and O'Reilly. So you're gonna want to maximize the value as much as possible. And getting a player like Ryan O'Reilly is very rare. And if you see a guy like Jonathan Taves, who's 34 years old, only possibly getting only a second or third overall pick in return, yeah, maybe you could say it's because of the contract as well, because he's getting paid 10.5 million, so they're gonna have to eat his contract up. But Ryan O'Reilly's getting paid 7.5, and he is recovering from a foot injury. So maybe the asking price is reduced because he's not going to be 100% in terms of full health, and the contract taking on that could affect a team in terms of what they give up for Ryan O'Reilly.
yeah,
But I do believe that if a guy like Sean Monahan is projected to get a first round pick, I do agree with you that a first round pick is the starting point in
yes,
negotiations,
yeah.
along with a prospect. Does not have to be the best prospect in your organization, but at least a guy in your top five, I would say.
Yeah. Now, I want to move on to a team that I believe personally makes a lot of sense, but it also depends on cap space. And we actually have a guy that is projected to be traded, so it actually makes sense to make a move like this, and that's the Edmonton Oilers, right? So the Oilers don't have a lot of cap space. It's going to be very interesting to see how they maneuver this. Obviously, if they're going to ask St. Louis to retain 50% of O'Reilly's salary, they're going to be able to make this work, but the reason I suggested the Oilers is because there's actually a guy that the Oilers want to move in, Jesse Puljujarvi, right? And with
Yeah.
where St. Louis is trying to go, if they are trying to trade Ryan O'Reilly, I think it makes sense for the Oilers because they're adding another defensively minded forward who can score points. But not only that, it allows Ryan Nugent Hopkins to move to the wing, and it allows the Oilers, who are currently having a second line of Well, Evander Kane is going to be there, but right now it's going to be Klim Kostin, Ryan Nugent Hopkins, and Matthias Janmark. But I think it's Evander Kane and Klim Kostin. In my opinion, right, you can have a line potentially of Ryan Nugent Hopkins, Ryan O'Reilly, and Evander Kane, which to me is a really good top six
I wouldn't do
considering.
that. I would keep the Zach Hyman and Nuge duo
No,
together.
well, Hyman's on the top line with McDavid and Draisaitl. That's why
Well,
I said
if I
that.
bring in O'Reilly, I would reunite Zach Hyman and Nuge because they've contributed to many of their points. So
Either way, the
um,
top six in general, the top six, the way it is, no matter who you put on that top six, at the end of the day, it's still a very good top six. And in my opinion, your asking price. Well, look, it's a first round pick. The Oilers have it. They trade that. They trade that away. A prospect. I mean, listen, probably not the highest end prospect, but if you throw in a Jesse Puljujarvi, let's say, he's basically a project more than a prospect, and then kind of like a C B level prospect that's not too big. But that I think could work, right? Because it's 50% retained. You trade a B prospect, you trade a project in Jesse Puljujarvi, who I think on a different team might show some
well,
promise,
do you think they
and
would
a
add
first
a
round pick.
first round pick as well?
Of course, you have to add a first round pick.
Okay.
In any deal that you do, no matter what it is, you have to add a first round
Because
pick. And also
yeah,
with Puljujarvi being as the fact that the others want to trade him, you're gonna have to give up something for the Blues to want to take
do
Puljujarvi
you
anyways.
think that the Edmonton Oilers may like throw in a guy like Raphael Lavoie or Xavier Bourgault?
Lavoie, I could see Borgo's too highly touted that I don't know if they make that move necessarily. If they throw Borgo in, I don't think they trade Puljujarvi to the Blues. That's how
Okay.
I see it.
Well, I was
Well,
gonna say one additional thing is that if they want to go with the most balanced lines, maybe bringing Draisaitl back as the second line center, having uh Nuge play the wing, and then Ryan O'Reilly playing third line center, maybe that would be awesome to see. But if they want to go in full effect and with the best lineup possible, having Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, Kane, Nuge, and O'Reilly as our top six is crazy. But another thing to take into consideration is that I think many of the teams that are going to trade for him are not going to re-sign him. He's going to hit the free agency market. The
yeah, the
only
cap,
one I
salary
do
cap is
see
crazy.
potentially re-signing him if they trade for him is Boston because Krejci and Bergeron could be
Yeah.
very well playing their last season, and
Mhm.
O'Reilly could be a perfect replacement.
To-
Um, to replace them at only
yeah.
31 years old. But another thing I'd like to add as well, his production this year was not great before he got injured. 16 points in 37 games, 10 goals and 6
Yeah.
assists, minus 28. That could also affect his value as well. Just wanted to throw that in.
Well, it could just be a situation where he's on a bad team and that's it. But
Yeah.
I want to move on to actually to me, there's two teams that are kind of dark horses in this. One of them that I don't really think needs to make this move, but I think should if they want to, and the other one I think absolutely need to make this move. But the one that I think doesn't really need to make this move is Dallas. Um, Dallas is stacked. Doesn't matter how you look at it. Their top nine is really good. They have Ty Dellandrea currently playing there on the third line, but obviously for them they have a healthy lineup. They're playing well. And the other thing is too is that look, adding Ryan O'Reilly makes sense. The thing is with Dallas is that Tyler Seguin, Jason Robertson, Joe Pavelski. That's your first line. Your second line, Mason Marchment, who's had a decent season. Rupe Hintz, who's been fantastic, and then Denis Guryanov's a bit of a mess situation. You could add Ryan O'Reilly to that mix. Maybe throw a guy like Rupe Hintz down the wing because you're definitely not going to have a
Yeah.
situation where O'Reilly's playing on the wing. O'Reilly has to play center, right? So you throw Rupe Hintz on the wing. You bring Guryanov down one, and then your top nine is Jamie Benn, Wyatt Johnston, and Denis Guryanov. That works. The thing is that I just don't think Dallas is going to be a big player in terms of that. I think Dallas is more so looking for a winger rather than an actual center because they like Wyatt Johnson as their third line center. Like I said, Sege and Rupe Hintz are playing top 6 minutes anyway, so I don't necessarily think O'Reilly fits on Dallas. I think he's more of a fit on the Colorado Avalanche. And the reason I say that is because, first of all, they've already been linked with Bo Horvat. They've also been linked with Sean Monahan. However, Gabriel Landeskog's been out, and they don't have a true second line center, right? They don't really have that. It's been a little bit of a of an issue for them.
Well,
And I
I
think
mean, well, Kadri also like leaving and not
that's
re-signing with
exactly.
them. You know,
But
it took a
that's
big hit on
exactly it.
them.
If you add a guy like O'Reilly, you throw him on your second line, right? JT Compher is currently playing second line center right now. I know Landeskog's injured, but JT Compher gets pushed down to the third line. Let's say Evan Rodriguez, once Landeskog comes back, gets pushed down to the third line. Now you have a third line of JT Compher, Alex Newhook, and Evan Rodriguez, and your second line becomes Valerie Natrushkin, Mikko Rantanen, or if they want to move Rantanen to the top line, they can. And then Ryan O'Reilly. To me, that's a really good top six. And the other thing is too is that Colorado's not afraid to trade prospects. Colorado's not afraid to trade
Actually,
first round
I
picks.
wouldn't even trade a prospect in this case. I know as a fact that Samuel Girard has been connected to trade rumors for quite a while, and he's not having the greatest season either. So that would be a trade piece that could go the other way. And in terms of Dallas, I know Radik
Yeah,
Faxka,
that's
whatever
the
is,
guy.
yeah,
Yeah,
could be a trade piece as well because they're looking to move him and they're dangling that guy
I
as
don't think
trade bait.
I don't think they're going to trade Gerard now just because we have a lot of injuries on defense, and already Colorado is struggling with staying healthy. They have Makar out, they have Bowen Byram out, they even have Josh Manson out as well on defense. I don't think they move Sam Gerard, and I think that if the Colorado Avalanche want to go on another Stanley Cup run, they need to trade away a first round pick. I don't think they have a problem with that either. Like I said before, and in terms of the prospects, I mean, listen, Colorado's a team that's in win now mode. They won the cup last year. They're looking to go back to back again, and kind of do that. So
Do you think? Do
I
you
do see
think
that happening.
Do you think that a team might trade away a former first round pick like Colorado did? Because I know Montreal was asking for a first round pick for Arturi Lehkonen, so they traded Justin Barron, who kind of compromises as a first round pick since he was a first round pick. So do you see a team possibly doing that? And not only that, I would like to add something to the whole Dallas conversation. Um, like you're saying, they're in need of a winger. And for me, they've also been linked to Jonathan Taves. So, but it doesn't really make sense. They should be looking at instead of looking at O'Reilly and Taves, they should be looking at wingers. So
Tarasenko,
look
yeah.
at Tarasenko and Taves, the two other guys on those teams that are willing to blow it all up and make some trades at the deadline. So that's just my opinion. And in terms of Colorado, I totally agree with you. They're lacking at the center position with Nazem Kadri gone. They're gonna have to replace that hole somehow, either term or short term, because they're in the win now mode.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of your question as to whether or not teams are going to trade away, let's say an equivalent of a first round pick and a first round talent. I mean, teams can do it. I think for a lot of teams, they'd rather keep the prospect over the pick just because at the end of the day, the prospect you already kind of are familiar with him. You've drafted him, whereas your first round pick could really just be a hit or miss type of situation. So I think teams are more open to trading a first round pick than let's say a prospect that was drafted in the first round. Obviously, there's been exceptions, like you said, Justin Barron last year with the Colorado Avalanche and the Habs. I just don't see it happening as frequently, and I don't think it's going to happen in a deal for Ryan O'Reilly. It may, but I don't think teams are willing to do that. And I think even the teams that we mentioned, right, like we said, if the Oilers trade their first round picks, to be honest, you're not moving Dylan Holloway and you're not moving Borgo, so I don't really see the point
Well, they
unless
should
you
go
want to.
after like look overall. This is how I see it. Boston makes sense if they
If they
fail
want to
to
move
get.
Lechel too, it makes sense.
Yeah, that he's been, a target as well.
Yeah,
That's what Vancouver wants apparently. If they fail to get Horvat and they really want a centerman, I think O'Reilly is the way to go. Dallas, they should be looking at a winger. New Jersey's another team as well. They should be looking at a winger. It looks like they're the front runners to get Timo Meyer, even though they've been linked to Horvat and O'Reilly because they want to make a big splash at the deadline. So, again, same thing there. Colorado is a fit. They need a centerman. Toronto, again, if you're gonna have to move someone on the wing essentially to make that happen, and you're gonna have to clear some cap space as well. Um, and in terms of Edmonton, they should focus on defense, not offense. I think they're
yeah,
totally fine on offense. Yeah, that's my overall thoughts essentially. So,
I agree.
uh, Yeah. So guys, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Where do you think Ryan O'Reilly will get traded? And if he will get traded by the 2023 deadline, is there a possibility that he stays and maybe they do resign him? Or is it time for St. Louis to blow it all up and just kind of have a retool or a rebuild, whatever you want to call it? But make sure to write your thoughts in the comment section below on where he goes and what he gets traded for. And also include your mock trades as well. Guys, we'll see you on the next episode of the Young Guns podcast. Thank you so much for watching.